Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So we're doing rest and review, safe to matter. Oh my gosh, what a big piece. This is like the third of the big three. The big three: safe to be lovable, safe to be worthy, and safe to matter. It's like, oh my gosh, feel like you matter. I mean, it's such a big inversion because you were put here by, source, God, universe, God put you here, right? Your parents participated in creating your body, but God, the you that's you, puts you here because you matter. I mean, you inherently matter, right? But we don't necessarily feel that. Someone says a certain thing, something doesn't go our way, and it feels like we don't matter, and it's such an inversion to our beingness, but you're changing that. You're changing all those chains, all those ways in which we're hooked into other people that says, hey, we have to do it this way. And so once we unhook that, it's like, oh my gosh, you revert back to your beingness and you're like, oh, I inherently matter. Like I'm here to do my thing. It doesn't matter what your response is, how you're wired or hooked up. Like, I inherently matter. And you get that they inherently matter too. And that they're doing their thing, and that's fine. You get to do your thing. But you matter. You're here, right? And we might not feel that. And that's what we're bringing back. We're hooking back into that, like hooking back into us by de-chaining, unhooking from all the ways in which we got hooked into something that says it ain't that way. Of like, oh, we got to do it like them. Oh, we got to be like this. And it's like, no. You got to be like you're supposed to be, that God put you here for. So it's really fantastic. This is, oh my gosh, what a great week. So we're going to go back and do a little review of that, because you've got the big three now on the beingness level. Like, we're starting to unhook that. Hook that in a really, really deep way, using our unconscious mind, going massively, massively deep. So the day one of that was with mom and dad. So it was like that, safe to matter. Oh, unhooking those, running those work gates. What was it, 4 to 12 hours after? Did you maybe get caught up a little bit of like, man, it was such an intense day. Oh, I could have slowed it down. That's a big win. That's not a mistake of like, oh, I was mistakenly not slowing it down. No. The win is to see that you didn't do that, or to see that you did. That just drives it deeper. If you're unconscious, like, yep, they're ready to go fast. It's what gets through. So you don't have to be traumatized. It's not like, oh, I've got to grit and bear it, right? Because there's only so long you're going to want to grit and bear it for. So it's like, nah, slow it down. Let your unconscious do this at warp speed. Let your unconscious do it. It's fantastic. Doesn't have to be painful. So just notice what happened. What was some of the, and also looking back, because you've done 6 more clearings since then, of like, now what does it look like looking back on that day? What are some new realizations that you got that day that you didn't know you got? And you're like, wow, wait, I got that clear. Oh man, that did change then. I did start thinking different then. Or you can claim it now of like, well, I didn't get it then, but I'm getting it now. Awesome. Now this is where we're accelerating. Even though we're taking a break from running warp gates, we're still accelerating, right? So now day 2, that was on our mother's side to our grandparents, safe to matter. What was that? How did that go? Just running it, just reflecting of like, when I ran those warp gates, what did I feel? What was that like? Of like, whoa, I didn't expect that. Wow, that was different. That will switch up. Or like, oh, that was different than the other weeks. Just note it. And it's not like it was supposed to be the same. It's supposed to be that way. Just notice what you noticed, right? It's always looking, kind of building that feedback of like, hey, unconscious mind, I'm paying attention here. I'm coming online here. We're ready to rock and roll. Your unconscious, the deeper connection, the faster you can go, and the magic that you can be shown, it's off the charts. Off the charts. So you're doing so good. These rest and reviews are really important. Kicking off the warp gates, super, super, ultra important, but it's also important to rest and review and, glean some more gold. So noticing what you did with grandparents, kind of like a day 2 of, safe to matter, right? And then we went to grandparents on your father's side. So we went to those grandparents and safe to matter. Like, what was that dynamic? Because this is what your dad lived into, right? And like, what was it like for your chaining of that, of like mattering with those grandparents? And like, what was all those rules that we started unwinding, and unconscious? Like, what was it like when we kicked it off? What did that feel like? But then also at 4 to 12 hours after, we're starting to get that, like, wow, my unconscious is doing a lot. It's really valuable to kick off these warp gates because a lot's happening. We want to build that. We're building that belief of like, whoa, lots going on. I'm bigger than I thought I was, all that good stuff. Right? And then like, what happened that day? You know, was there some new realizations or new ones that you're getting now looking back of like, oh man, I pivoted. I did a life pivot and I triggered it. You know, you created this. You created the healing that created this life pivot. You know, realize it, making that hook, realizing that, oh, I did that. That was me. I'm coming online, right? So what happened that day with those? And then day 4, which is with the siblings or only child, right? So what happened then when you did that? Because that's kind of like you're on your pair level of coming in. It's less, now we're not out of the legacy, more in like kind of we're both, you know, because your siblings kind of got the same kind of chaining that happened and the same influences, but they're going to do it different, you know, because they had to still do, they chained differently. They got different experience and they're slightly different in time as you too. So it's like, okay, and even if you had a twin, it's still a difference in time. There's still a different perspective. So, but unless you look at that like, oh, wow, I changed to them like this and they changed like this. And this is where when we release it and start realizing like, wait a second, I'm starting to see how the chains happen. And don't worry about you trying to figure it out. I'm like, oh, was it this way? Was it? That gets revealed to you. You're just going back and realize, okay, well, what did I feel? What happened when I ran those warp gates? And like, then what happened the 4 to 12 hours after too? You know, because they're still going. You know, we took off the conscious mind of like, hey, we'll kick it off. Now let it run the unconscious. But now looking back of like, well, what started to occur? How has the family dynamics changed? You know, and maybe it gotten like things are way smoother, or it may come a little more rough of stuff you didn't see before, and you're like, ooh, that's okay. We're letting our unconscious, you know, just like, you know, that feedback of like, oh yeah, there's something kind of sticky here. Before it was like, yeah, it was sticky, didn't work, but we're just gonna run that. Now it's like, it's sticky, it doesn't work. I kind of want to get some change in here, right? I want to get some, you know, we can run a warp gate again and help free that up some more. But it's like, oh yeah, there's something funky I didn't see before. Now I can see it, you know, that's a big win. So what happened on that, right? Now we're going to go to day 5 of like the, you know, safe to matter. And that's when we did non-biological parents, which can be a huge influence. Could be even a bigger influence than parents. You know, we're just getting to like, especially if you're like, you know, adopted, you know, your non-biologicals are going to be a huge influence and huge ways in which we change and we free from that. You know, it's not like getting rid of them. We're just getting rid of the way in which we chain in the bad way. But we're still going to be chained to the biological parents because you came in and you were biologically there with those grandparents, right? But doesn't mean the non-biological parents. And it's also people that were like a parent to you. So you could have had 2 parents, grew up with them, everything was fine, but you also had non-biological parents. It could have been a teacher that you really looked up to, but then you also picked up some chaining of like, I really, you know, I love their opinion and I want their opinion of me to be good. And you're like, ooh, you don't need their opinion of you to be good. You know, that who you are, that's to you and God. You know, whether they like it or don't like it, you know, that's icing on the cake. They like it, but if they don't, too bad. You know, God put you here for those reasons between you two, and you don't need that approval of others, right? But when you're hooked in, when you're chained in and it hurts and your life depends on it, like it's a safety chain and you're hooked into it, it's like, oh, you just can't let it go. You can kind of be like, okay, I don't care, but I do, right? But we're taking those chains out and realizing, okay, what was that like to the non-biological parents, right? We're taking the chains out to where, wow, I started getting some freedom, started showing up a little more like me, or I freaked out, but that's fine. So 4 to 12 hours after starting to kick them off and realizing, because we did the self-referencing energetic chains, those are huge. That's the way in kind of which we relock everything. Like we pick up this, okay, here's a template, how we're doing everybody else. And that kind of holds into place. They're doing their part, but they're dynamic, they're changing, they're moving, you know, people are evolving, right? So those chains can dynamically change. But so we put our own chains on there to hold it in place because we think it's really important of like, well, you might let things down, but don't worry, I'm gonna stay locked up. Even if you get free, I'm locking up, right? So we did the self-referencing and any change. We started freeing that up too. And the ways in which we referenced ourselves of like how we're gonna do the old patterns. So how was that? And then the nuance, because we did, you know, non-biological parents and we did self-referencing change. It's a big day. And then can we see the nuances of like when the stuff was going, of where did it come from? You don't force it. You just notice now looking back of like, hey, I think that was a self-referencing change that was releasing from, right? We're building, you don't have to force that. We're just letting that happen. Your unconscious is gonna start building that connection to where that's tuning up that once you start getting that and letting it come in and be like, oh yeah, it was the referencing chain. Oh wait, it was the non-biologicals. Because the more you start becoming aware, the more it's going to be like letting the chains go. And then especially further down the road, when we start doing it just to people, it's like you could just say energetic chains to a person. And all the stuff that we've cleared, all these fundamentals, you can clear them in like one warp gate and clear it, all the ones to a person. And then you get massive freedom, right? So we're building that foundation, right? And we're building that communication, because what your unconscious wants to bring to you, the depth, the power, the amazing, which is coming from source through your unconscious into your mind. Oh, the potential is so huge. So you're building this, you're wiring at such a powerful level by just doing these rest and reviews and like paying attention, because we're running major energy work, but you're starting to also pay attention to like, hey, what happened? What's going on there? Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, right? Because that's just the more that you consciously can take in. Then your unconscious can be like, okay, let's get you some more magical moments at a deeper level, which is what we're craving. So that's why it's so important. And then day 6 was the meditation, where we did all the clearings in a single day. I know, intense, right? Kicking them all off again. And maybe you slowed them down, that's fine. Just notice, what was that like? Of like, you know, and it could be sometimes like, I just didn't feel anything, right? And that could just be like you blew out, you know? That could just be like, it was just all the water flowed over, you know, it was just boom. And then just notice that, like, and now looking back, I'm like, hey, maybe I blew out. Maybe I want to redo the meditation and say, run at 1/50th power, and then see what happens. And it's like, wow, I turned it back to 150, and my day was super intense. And then you know of like, wow, my warp gate is running really powerfully. You know, for me, it's running really powerful. I need to run at 1/50th. And it's not like a race with, oh, well, he ran at 1 power and I ran at 1/50th. So it means that I'm less. No, it's none of that. It's like, you're just mastering what? You know, because it could be your spiritual power is just firing. So when you run the warp gate, it's just like, wow. And that running at 1/50th power really gets to where you feel like that. You're feeling a little bit. You're not too intense, but you're moving as much of the stuff that needs to go out. So you're just playing with this, you know, you're building that communication with your unconscious, which is so powerful. So that was day 6, and now you're in your rest and review. Hopefully with all these rest and reviews, you're really seeing the massive energy work that you're doing, not to mention building that communication with your unconscious, which is such a game changer. You're doing fantastic. I mean, you've already done so much energy work just by kicking off the warp gates. Now realizing that you did it is just another game changer. And until we talk again, have a blessed day or a blessed night.